this is where I've got to talk about parts of my journey.
Please.
All right? I already made reference that I adopted 2 kids in Korea, and when I was married, and I adopted them in January of 1976, and as I said, in 76, 6 months later, we came back to the States, and in 79, my wife decided that this was not her living in the community. And she decided to leave the community and our family. And now, paradoxically, knowing that I'm a gay man, it turns out she was lesbian. And so it just wasn't fitting for her. And so I then asked for an assignment in Chicago. And every year would make a trek back to my own family in New Jersey. And one year, it was 84, the kids had been with my ex-wife in Philadelphia, and my parents came down and picked them up, and they spent 2 or 3 days with them before I joined. So the first night I was home, and Liz, my daughter Liz, had a bed in my father's office, which was in the basement next to my brother's room. And I went down to say goodnight to Liz. And she turned to me and she said, "Is there a way to lock this door?" And I turned to her and said, "Is there a reason that we need to get the door locked?" And she said, she started to tell me that my brother had been making sexual advances on her for years. At that time, she was 14. Well, that's a wake-up call, isn't it? I mean, you want to talk about encounters, that's an encounter right there. And I made sure that, first of all, I taught her how to lock the door. And then we were only there one more night, and she slept next to my room up on the first floor. And I came back, and I made sure she got counseling and care. Her mother supported her, I supported her. The following weekend, I was assigned to work with LaDanya Wagner, who used to be Donna McCluskey. And I've talked this with LaDanya. She knows this story. I've told it to her personally. She already heard of it. I made sure she knew about it. I was falling apart with this. And finally, Sunday morning, I just turned to LaDanya and I talked to her about, this was just tearing me apart. And LaDanya said to me, Bruce, it's terribly upsetting what happened to Liz. But the way you're talking about it makes me think there's something more going on. Well, I had already scheduled an appointment to see somebody in a child sexual abuse unit in Chicago to talk about my brother. By this time, it was very clear my parents weren't buying that this had happened. So I went to see this counselor, heard my story, and one of the things he said to me was, Bruce, you've taken care of Liz. You've made sure she's getting care. It sounds to me like nobody's taking care of you. Nobody had ever said that to me in my life. Nobody's ever said that to me in my life. I also told him, by the way, out of the Institute wisdom, I don't go in for this long-term stuff. Well, it is 29 years later, I'm seeing the same counselor. And I've been through a journey. Now, he's not the counselor that makes any suggestions about anything. But I have understood myself as being sexually abused as a child. From my mother, early on. From my dad as a teenager. From my grandfather. And from a family doctor. And needless to say, that was all buried. It took me 1.5 years in counseling before I even raised the issue of being molested by one of them. So, part of my journey has been a healing journey. In my life, I walked in to that journey believing that their evil was winning. I couldn't have said that at the time, but that's how I lived. Their impact was winning. And I was very mistrustful of anybody. And there are lots of times that my therapist indicated that I was going to win. I was going to come through this. I didn't believe him. I kept coming back, didn't I? But, and I just sort of had faith that, this was something that might happen. It took reliving every single moment of my abuse as a child. Every pain that I went through, emotional, sexual, physical pain, with his presence, I went through. It took a long time. I can stand here today and say, I've won. That the evil that was perpetrated onto me has been overcome. That took a good 24, 25 years of work. One of the understandings that we were given in the community was, if you just went on this road of dealing with things like this, you just go on it forever, and you might as well not do it. Because, it would never end. I don't think that's true. Now, it's a choice. You don't have to do this road if you have this kind of experience. Lord knows I'm very sympathetic to people that start this and say, I'm not going to do it anymore. But I can say that if you start this journey, and if you continue it, you will come to an end where you can say, life is good. It doesn't start off that way. But you can end up there by plowing through and working on it and living through that. I do believe that one thing inside me was not damaged by my childhood abuse. I refused to let them have the last word. I refuse to let them have the last word. Somehow that carried me through. They are not going to win. They're not going to win. And out of that has brought me really, has allowed me to reconnect with my emotional life, with my real emotional life. And it's kind of a thing that while we talked about emotions, we really didn't want to deal that much with emotions. In a sense, we were almost afraid of them. And, I can hear today, when you walk into that room, and if you're facilitating or teaching, you hang your life on the doorknob and you walk in. Now, I spent 5 months in therapy. We're not talking once a week. We're talking 3 times a week or more. 5 months working on Liz's death. I have a friend who lost his daughter a few years before mine. And I'm making a judgment here. But it's so apparent to me that he did not allow himself to go through the journey I went on, because there are still times when he feels hampered. He says, I can't do this because it'll just remind me of Christine, And I hear that, and I'm not saying I don't think of my daughter. I do think of her. But I feel like there's been some healing to that event that would not have happened had I not spent the time at the moment to really work on what that meant, what she meant to me, what her death was, and how to continue living beyond her death. Healing is coming to a point where you can say yes to what happened. Not that it was good, not that you feel it was good to say, but that you can say yes to life. I can say yes to all of the parenting I did up to that point. And in some way, allowing that event to have happened. She was, the weekend after she was killed, she was to have been proposed to by her boyfriend. This is a story I tell myself. It's all you can do. I'm not sure she would have made it in that relationship. Not necessarily with the guy. The guy was fine. I'm not sure she was capable of it, of sustaining a really long-term relationship because of her own history. Coming out of 5 years in an orphanage. And she never made it with some people. She never really connected with her adoptive mother. And I just feel there was some deep connections and scars in her. I don't know. She might have made a great wife, I don't know whether she would have had children, and if she had children, how would she have related? I don't know. But that's kind of a story that you say, maybe the mystery. I mean, it's terrible maybe to say that, but maybe there, maybe you can maybe there is a reason. Not that I believe that anybody caused this. This was caused by a man who ran through a red light. I mean, you know, and that's how it happened. And but in the broader sweep of things, I believe she had also come to a very good point in her life, where some things were pulling together for the first time for her. At any rate, those are some of the thoughts you have, but that helps in the healing.
Yeah.
And also, yes, her death was terrible and serious and impacted me, but I have a life, and I'm not going to throw that life away. I'm going to make use the best. I mean, I'm going to use this. I mean, you know, give to this life as much as I can while I'm here. Reflection is part of it too, and I write something every day, reflecting on what's going on. But then. Just as important, and I do a daily walk, 45 minutes. And I rehearse things in that daily walk. That daily walk, first of all, I started because some chiropractor told me it'd be good for my back. It still is good for my back. But also, it's become the occasion for me to rehearse this journey that I've been on, to rehearse things that are happening right today. And sometimes I dwell on those for a bit during that 45 minutes. But I rehearse basically that journey, aspects of that journey that I've been on, and where I am today, and people that are just crucial for me today and my support. You know, all those things, rehearsing during that 45 minutes that I do practically every day. So the reflection, and then I have a Sunday morning practice that I do, and it involves a lot of stages, but it's reflective stages, reflecting on the past week, reflecting on various critical points that I've done work on, and basically just again, in a deeper way. It usually takes me an hour going through critical parts of my life and my journey, and making sure that I am clear that I've been on an incredible journey so far, and that I've been through a lot of healing so far. And it's not over, but I'm living on the other side of a lot of dimensions of the journey. And in a sense, you might say that going through again the pain of my childhood makes me very attuned to when people are really speaking honestly and when they're not, when they're speaking authentically and when they're not, or how I can maybe ask one question that might make them go another step on their journey.